Again, John will need no introduction. He's librarian here at Galway. The element that you may not know about him, apart from his obsessive support for Everton, is that John has got the most phenomenal memory. So particularly for someone like myself, when you first start on CONUL or RUA, LG or something, John will say, I think you'll find, Helen, that we discussed that on Tuesday, the 17th of January, 1998. He has got the most phenomenal memory. Anyway, John is going to talk to us, or raise the question, have academic libraries transformed their position in the institution? John.
Thank you very much, Helen. And soccer will make a brief appearance in this presentation as well. But this is a big question, a lot to cover in 20 minutes. I'll do the best I can. I did a survey of the published literature late last year, early this, and some of what I found turns up in this presentation quite a bit. It might look a bit pessimistic, but there were trends in the published literature that I think you'll see here that we need to take account of. And just a brief outline, just a short look at institutional priorities and library transformations, just to summarise those. Then we'll spend a bit of time looking at how the higher education institution may view the library. It doesn't always do so, but it may. Here's a bit about soccer, a few own goals I think we've scored. I want to talk about that. And then, of course, towards the end, look at what we might do differently to have more influence on campus. It is important to say that coverage is general here. You may not recognise your library in this, you probably won't. It's just, these are the trends in the published literature, and it's important to say local experiences vary, often as much down to personalities as finance. So, I won't linger too long here because I think you know all of this, but it is important just to what are the things that are shaping higher education institutions these days in the way they go about their business. Well, clearly, as you know, there's a much greater scrutiny of what we do. We have to compete very hard for students and for research funding. The students that come to us expect more because they're paying more. Technology, of course, has completely transformed the way research and teaching are done. We have a global agenda. Internationalisation is a word now you'll always hear on campus. And, of course, for some time we've operated under challenging economic conditions. And so that has translated maybe into certain common priorities for universities or higher education institutions, HEIs if I call them for short. So really I think if you looked at any HEI strategy, you would see these items in it. It wouldn't be the only parts of the strategy, but these things are at the core. You want to get and keep students, so student success is very important. Your research wants to be internationally recognised because that will help you to compete. You must engage with your local and indeed off-campus communities and virtual communities. Global reputation is a big thing now with rankings and such like. And impact seems to be the word that's used an awful lot. Metrics as well, we've a bit of an obsession with that. But these things you will see in any HEI strategy, I think. And libraries have responded in many ways. The points on the right aren't meant to match the ones on the left, and they don't. But just to say, we've done things oriented towards users in particular, shifting from collections to users. Our learning spaces, like Governor just said, are totally different from what we used to offer before, again, with the student in mind and interactive learning. Digital literacy is not just information literacy these days. We've expanded our horizons. We operate across the whole research cycle. We probably used to engage more at the beginning and end, but now it's across the whole cycle. And we formed a huge series of partnerships and convergences with others on and beyond the campus as well. So you might be saying, all these good things we've done, all these transformations, and you'll hear more of them. You've heard them at this conference so far. You'll hear more. We should be moving up the food chain, you would say, in our organizations. But we're not feeling it, seems to be the message in this slide. Ithaca ran a survey of 700 US library directors in 2016, and they asked them really a question relating to their status. Do you think you're seen as a member of the institution's senior academic leadership? And what you see here is that a decreasing percentage feel that to be the case, quite a significant decrease between 2013 and 2016. So you might say, why is that after all the good things we've done? Well, I think some of it is down to how we're viewed, some of the perceptions of libraries in the published literature that I've mentioned. So I think these are influential in where we're at in the institution. So there was a report on mapping the future of academic libraries by CONUL, a tremendous piece of work actually. And this bit won't surprise you. We do labour under traditional perspectives. I think 33 people from libraries and outside libraries participated in this piece of work. And generally, it's in those who weren't of libraries, tend to see libraries primarily as storehouses of books. I think we know that, so it's not new, but I suppose, why does it happen? Well, maybe the people in charge of our institutions think of libraries as they were when they were students, but it is a bit disappointing we're not getting credit for all the changes we've made. So the book brand, good and bad, government noted its strengths, and there are strengths, but it is not the only thing we do. Here's a survey of 200 US provosts, as in senior academic leaders, looking at retention, enrollment, student academic success, faculty research productivity, and how much the library contributes in those areas. And it's kind of lukewarm response. They're saying, the provosts see the library to be somewhat involved in those areas, marginally involved in enrollment, so a little bit disappointing. When they're asked why that was the case, in general, I think they just didn't think of us as having a contribution to those student success areas. So that might be something that we need to work on, clearly. We're just not seen as players in areas that are big to the institution. CONUL also produced The View from Above last year, very interesting. I think it was 12 senior academic leaders were surveyed, or interviewed rather, and here's what they said about the library. It's just not a problem. It's not an institutional risk register. It's not a big issue generally. Not a good place for us to be, I think, in terms of identity and progression in the institution. The image it conjures to me is like a pair of slippers, comfy, cozy, but so what? So somewhat a sense that we are taken for granted, which is not ideal. Invisibility, I think, comes out. It's kind of linked to the previous slide. This is the Mapping the Future of Academic Libraries report. Somebody sitting on the board of university says, nothing comes up about the library, not even anything of interest. That's pretty unflattering. Let's hope it's only at that person's institution. But again, you really wouldn't want that. That's certainly not where we would want to be. Also related to invisibility, the Teaching Excellence Framework in the UK last year. A big exercise you was into would highlight the role of libraries in learning. But it was followed up after the submissions were made. The Bookseller magazine rang up a number of senior administrators, and it seemed that the library hardly featured at all, despite the good things we would see ourselves as doing in that area. So the phrase there, troubling level of ignorance among some senior administrators. Again, not a great platform for progress up the institutional ladder. Ithaca again, I think this one's interesting. Dissonance is the word I use here. Library directors and their bosses not on the same page, or rather decreasingly so, because the statement you asked here is direct supervisor and I shared the same vision for the library. Well, it's declining is the message again between 2013 and 2016, and it looks like on average 3 different types of institution. It's only true in about 60% of cases. And that has to make it problematic for progressing, because if we're not on the same page as those who probably be making decisions, it's not good. So only 3 out of 5 of us are on the same page. More dissonance, sorry, it's quite small, I apologise. Don't worry, I can talk through it. Between library directors and academics, Ithaca also surveyed academics the year before, in 2015. And here's an interesting and slightly worrying finding in that the library directors, the 700 of them, generally 80% of them felt that they were making a strong contribution to student success, providing information resources, research skills, training, etc. However, that's in blue. In red would be the views of the academics. Only about half of them thought it. So there's quite a big gap between 50 and 80% that, again, we would need to be cognizant of. And also, going back to the Mapping the Future of Academic Libraries report, a sense that we change, but too slowly. We're into incremental rather than disruptive change. We're using that word here, disruptive, but we're seen as not being terribly quick to change, innovative and such like. So we would probably dispute some of those things. We work hard on them, but they are the views of others. So that's what we're up against, if you like. Those are the views. But also, we may not have helped ourselves. And it's been a bad week for goalkeepers, let it be said, but we won't go into that. I will stop torturing this poor guy. But we have scored a few own goals ourselves. 3 is quite enough. And one of them, I've often thought this myself and talked about it to other people in CONUL and IUALG. Sometimes we use the wrong terminology, limiting terminology, service and support. We talk too much about that. And a report on academic library impact for the ACRL kind of brought that one out. They spoke to 14 provosts. And those provosts did highlight that we tended to, we overused service, we talked too much about it, and that they would see it as a less proactive term. And in fact, they're kind of urging us that actually we might talk more about our activities, the active offerings, space, events, and other good things we do, not just service. So that's one to contemplate. The same report makes you wonder the wrong conversations could be happening between us as well, because this one, again, quite small, but don't worry. Just to try and explain the colour scheme, were interviews of both library administrators and provosts, and the provosts are in light blue and underneath them in grey, the library administrators. But again, some difference in terms of what people are emphasising. The provosts talking far more about teaching and learning than the library directors. Why might that be? And equally, you get the same with student success, a theme more common among the provosts than among ourselves. So those are gaps we might need to bridge. Laura Saunders published a couple of articles on library strategic plans. I think she found a disconnect between them and the institutional plans. The first one in 2015 rather, she looked at 63 strategic plans of libraries, of academic libraries. I was a bit startled by this, that only a quarter of them actually connected with the institutional plan. That's not much. Just over 10% of them took on areas like recruitment, retention, student success, which we know are important to the university. So we're not really helping ourselves if we're not focusing on those areas. And I suppose a graphical version of the same thing, just to show that. Student outcomes, as I say, about 10 or 11%. Collections, 100%. Are we focused more on inputs than outputs, I wonder? That's a question we might want to ponder. Back to Ithaca, and when I've turned some communications deficits here, the library directors again seeing that the most important thing they're doing, 80% of them see support and student success as the most important thing they're doing. But only half of them said that their library actually had clearly articulated how they're contributing to student success, which begs the question that if we're not telling the campus what we're doing around student success, who else is going to do it? And actually, a lack of strategy coming out of this Ithaca survey, perhaps even more worrying. I was a bit surprised at this because the statement here is library has a well-developed strategy to meet changing user needs and research habits. And really, maybe these people were being too hard on themselves or too honest, but whatever way you shake it up, only about 50% of those libraries surveyed seem to have a strategy for this pretty important area of our activity. And these changes have been going on for a while now, so I think we should have a strategy, and I'm surprised to see that figure so low. So an own goal, I would suggest. Another one coming out of the View from Above survey is a tendency for us to be inward focused. I think government mentioned some of this as well. But interesting quote here, somebody saying that the previous librarian was too focused on getting the house in order rather than promoting the library and gaining more strategic impact. And you only have so much time. If you spend too much of it on library processes and procedures and perfecting those, you have less time for getting out on campus and getting support and traction for the library. So really, how much do our processes and procedures matter? I'm not saying they don't matter, but in the greater scheme of things, we should think how we spend time. Second quote from that one, yes. And again, a good point, making the point that, we should be able to talk about things other than libraries. We should be able to go out on campus, not just the directors, I'd feel, but have a view on other things, the great issues of the day on campus. We should be able to talk about those and be part of that conversation and not just talk about our own narrow area. Yes, back to the Mapping the Future of Academic Libraries. Something I've termed brand complacency here. This is a great report, well worth reading, and they talk about some of the mantras, some of the things that we tell ourselves perhaps, or we hear from others, and we tend to believe them too readily. like the library is a strong brand. Yes, nice statement. What does it actually mean? And I think, as we've seen, it can often be quite a limiting term. It can mean the book brand, or just a kind of a narrow, old-fashioned brand, and not one that reflects the many contributions we make. The library is neutral. Not sure that's very exciting. Does that suggest we don't stand for anything in particular? What's our identity, I think, is what's screaming out from there. So these things should be challenged, and let's not be too complacent about them as being positives. Hope that wasn't all too depressing, but we're going to look at some of the more positive angles, some of the things we can do about this, and no doubt we are doing. And you'll have seen some of the answers are obvious, but I just picked 5 overlapping areas where I think we could actually focus our efforts a bit more. Using new language. The Mapping the Future report was really good. I think introduced me to some new language. There's a few of these we'll have heard of, but we don't use them enough. Libraries platform, libraries infrastructure. But the computational library. The library is a storehouse, collector, miner of data, or a facilitator of all of that, and some of the spaces that government showed us play to that. The globalized library, I think Jim Neal talked about this, that we're not just dealing with the local, but we are trying to solve great global problems, digital preservation, open research, digital literacy and such like. The boundaryless library, we employ people from other professions increasingly, and we definitely work with them. We should be proud of that. We're not just librarians working on narrow library-focused agendas. So our boundaries are spread, and we should maybe advertise that a bit more. CONUL Focus did a nice feature on leadership perspectives in 2016, and a message was screaming out from earlier, focus more on campus priorities. And Pete Ryan from Canterbury Christchurch University, I think, put it well in that, he just said, we should put more emphasis, show our value in the academic experience, retention, progression, put more focus on that, and give evidence of how we're contributing to it. And I think we'll be better thought of if we do that. And he's a nice piece of advice that makes sense. Seize opportunities to work on campus-wide projects. So that all makes good sense. Simple message, get out more, I suppose. A lot of the library staff don't leave the building, and the reasons sometimes for some staff where that's the case, but really we do need to be out there more on campus, definitely. And then that was coming out loud and clear in some previous slides. And again, one of the comments here is, librarians have a terrible habit of wanting to collaborate. I don't think it's terrible, but maybe we're seen as not doing so outside our own doors. So need to get out more, I think, is a message. And also the second one's a bit more positive, put your head above the parapet. Help the university to deal with the big challenge that it has, and share what we've done digitally. We'd be helping others if we did so. Another survey, view from beyond librarians who've worked outside the UK. I just like the quote here. I've interpreted as partnering broadly and not being servants in a narrow way. Good. So I think we've heard some of this, but worth saying it again. We should try and be seen as partners. Why not? In the academic exercise, not just servants. And also, let's accept that, I think we like depth in libraries, but I think breadth might serve us better on campus. We may need to be able to work across a wider range of areas, new areas, things we don't know much about, but get stuck in and take it on. I think we'd be valued more for that. I used this one at last year's CONUL conference, but I like this one. I do use it a lot. It's about digital humanities in its context, but some strong language here. It's kind of calling us out in libraries for timidity, and actually for academic inferiority complexes, and embracing servitude and such like. So fairly heavy stuff. But and the message is, we don't want to be in that space. But what happens? Others claim the credit. Our brethren in English and history, they're all great at claiming credit, and for things that we've done. So we need to assert that credit. Just to make a few observations at the end. We've got just about a minute for that. I think we deserve more credit. Use that word a lot, but we have done a lot for the universities, the campuses, the users. We've shared our space, for example, in ways that others are less inclined to do than us. We've taken on new areas, and generally we've done good things. We deserve more credit, in my view, for the transformations we've made. But the reasons it doesn't happen, we've seen some of the perceptions, but also senior administrators have short attention spans. It's hard to get to get things through to them sometimes. And they also have large portfolios, which, again, we're only a part of that. Remember, we're not the only ones transforming. The whole higher education enterprise is transforming or being transformed. Maybe are they doing it faster or making more noise about it than us? I don't know, but we're not getting the full attention we might. Identity, I mentioned that. Is it clear and distinctive? Are we somewhere between books and IT, some kind of halfway house that's ill-defined? And of course, we have a stronger contribution to make to campus issues, but just let's not beat ourselves up too much. Are others noticeably more committed beyond their departments? I'm not so sure. Also, we're managing something highly complex and challenging these days. Libraries are changing more now than they ever have, so we do have to give attention to that and lead it and lead our staff. And we have stuff like procurement, that's compliance that just hold us back, that we're expected to do as well. And it's not terribly strategic, but you're in trouble if you don't do it. Then there are the newer agendas really are contributing. They're campus issues. They just need to be recognised as such, open research and such like. And really just my question is at the end, are we too good a citizen? Are we too generous and too slow to assert credit? Maybe we need that harder edge. And just finish there's a literature survey I did. Nearly everything I cited is in there, so if you want the URL of that, you'll get through to everything I said. But the published slides have got all the items I cited as well. So thank you very much.